Trump is defeated in 2020, and who becomes president? Joe Biden. He has a track record, engagement. The question you have to ask yourself is, when Biden becomes president, does Biden go back to engagement, liberal policy, or does he follow in the footsteps of Donald Trump and even toughen up our balance of power approach to dealing with China? The answer, as you surely know, is that Joe Biden does not go back to engagement, and one can easily argue that Joe Biden has been tougher on the Chinese than Donald Trump was. So Trump was clearly the guy who flipped the policy from engagement to realpolitik, but Joe Biden is following in his footsteps. But nevertheless, if you listen to the Americans talk about the competition between the United States and China, they don't describe it in balance of power terms. They don't describe it in the terms that you heard me describe it in here in my lecture. They describe it as an ideological fight between authoritarian regimes and liberal regimes, right? It goes back to that gentleman's question in the rear before about the East-West divide. We in the West, especially in the United States, define it in liberal terms. We have this very Manichaean view of the conflict. They're the good guys, liberal Democrats. They're the bad guys, authoritarian states. And we're involved in this deep-seated ideological struggle. But I would argue that this is crazy. China was a communist state when we were playing kissy face with it, when we were involved in engagement. China's political system is not changed. What changed was the balance of power. Here was the basis of engagement, okay? When we were feeding the beast and China was getting more and more powerful, and I was saying, this is crazy, people would say engagement's going to work. And this is how engagement works. We integrate China into the world economy, and we make China rich. We make it prosperous, which of course we did. Number two, we integrate it into international institutions like the WTO, right, the IMF, the World Bank. We make it, this was Robert Zoellick's words. These were Robert Zoellick's words. We make it a responsible stakeholder. Think about those words, a responsible stakeholder. You make it a law-abiding or a rule-abiding state by integrating it into institutions, right? So it's prosperous, it's a rule-abiding state, and then what will happen is China will turn into a liberal democracy. Right? Because when you become prosperous, you become rich, and you're surrounded with all these other rich countries in these institutions. You democratize. And once China democratizes, we'll live happily ever after. That's the liberal theory of international politics known as democratic peace theory. My view, as you would expect, is, first of all, you can't be sure that they'll democratize. Second, even if they democratize, you can't be sure that they won't backslide. And third, even if they democratize and stay democratic, you can't know their intentions. And therefore, you do not want to take a chance. But you just couldn't make that argument, because getting back to your question, this gentleman in the front here, liberalism was such a powerful ideology during the unipolar moment. This, again, is the subject of my book. That those were really tough times for someone like me to get up before an audience like you and make a realist argument, because people thought the world had changed.